What is totalitarianism, very briefly, so we can set the stage?
We are thinking in the first place about communism, Nazism, the Soviet Union, and so on. And that were indeed the first totalitarian systems. Before the 20th century, totalitarianism did not exist. That's important to know. Totalitarian systems are based on the process of mass formation, a kind of group dynamic which makes that a part of the population fanatically believes in a certain narrative or a certain ideology. And when this group, this mass, is led by a few leaders, they can easily seize control of society, and that's when a new kind of state system emerged, a totalitarian state, because the totalitarian state has a huge secret police at its disposal, namely this part of the population that fanatically believes in the state narrative. So that's a totalitarian state. Hannah Arendt warned us that we've seen communist totalitarianism, we've seen fascist totalitarianism, but that the new totalitarianism, the totalitarianism of the future, would be a technocratic totalitarianism, which is led not by gang leaders such as Stalin and Hitler, but by dull bureaucrats and technocrats.
But I really want to make sure I have my arms around this and the listeners can follow along. The idea behind a totalitarian system as opposed to a dictatorship. Dictatorship's a strong person, they rule with fear, you understand what's happening, but totalitarianism is a structure that people buy into fundamentally, right? And that structure's, it's an idea, it's an ideology. And that ideology doesn't have to make sense, doesn't have to be sensible. Often, isn't that actually a feature of it, that it's kind of, on some level, provably nonsense?
Yes, absolutely. It starts from an ideological conviction, a blind and fanatic ideological conviction. In a totalitarian state, the point of gravity is not so much situated in the elite, it's rather situated in this part of the population that is in the grip, fanatically in the grip of this ideology. And ultimately, the root cause of the totalitarian system is always the ideology itself. So, uh, the ideology in the Soviet Union, for instance, was historical materialism of Marx. The ideology that seized control of society in Nazi Germany was kind of race theory, neo-Darwinist race theory. And now I believe that the ideology that is imposing itself to society now is rather a kind of transhumanist ideology, a technocratic ideology. It's taking control of society through all kinds of narratives. That's important. You have to
Mm.
distinguish between the ideology and the narratives that are used, often by the elite, to convince people to go along with the ideology or to accept all these changes that or this reshaping of society that is needed if for this new society to be created. And these narratives, in my opinion, now are like the climate narrative, they are the corona narrative, the narrative of the war on terror. All these narratives are, in one way or another, narratives that make people feel as if it is unavoidable that we need more technological control, that we cannot rely on democratic uh, decision making procedures, but that we need experts to take control of society. But in the end, it's the ideology itself. It are all variants of mechanist ideology, the mechanist view on man and the world, the idea that the entire universe is like a dead material machine, a set of elementary particles that interact with each other according to the laws of mechanics, and that's crucial, that can be perfectly understood in a rational way. It's that kind of thinking, that kind of ideology that ultimately leads to the concentration camps.
There's an evolutionary process here, and that's what's before us right now. Nothing less than sort of maybe the heart of our species is really at a cusp of something here. And if we get it wrong, we go down a place that ends in mass atrocity. Guess what? We've been there before. Probably not a lot more to learn from that, except it sucks.
That if you are convinced that everything around you can be reduced to the categories of your own logical understanding, you actually constantly destroy your connection with life. You constantly destroy your awareness of the mystery of life. I think that it is as if we fanatically think in a logical way, it is as if we connect the one logical ID to the other logical ID. That's what logic is. It connects one ID to one other ID to one other ID to one other ID. It is literally as if we build a wall around us, a wall through which we isolate ourselves from the music of life, from the vibration of life. And as soon as you can start to accept that your logical understanding will always be limited and will never deliver you the ultimate knowledge, it is as if all these logical building blocks slide away a little bit from each other. So I'm not against rational understanding, not at all. We have to walk the path of rationality as far as possible. But if we would be rational enough, we would soon arrive at the limit of rationality. And that's the entire problem, of course. Science in the beginning was equal to open mindedness. It was like a discourse through which a minority went against a dominant discourse. It became the dominant discourse itself, and as such, it became the privileged instrument to manipulate the population to be successful, and it lost all its characteristics of truth speech, and that's where we are now. We are dealing with something that calls itself science, but which is actually has nothing to do with science anymore. It's an ideology, it's a prejudice, it's a dogmatic system. The replication crisis showed this so clearly. It showed us that up to 85% of the published research findings cannot be reproduced and are false.
To me, the number one critique where I would say, here's why I don't like totalitarianism, is that it's fundamentally, to me, Matthias, it's boring. It asks me to subsume myself into a collective ideology that itself is not complete. It's small. It doesn't want me to be my authentic self. It doesn't want me to be different in any way. It just wants me to fit in. Fundamentally, I think they're asking people not to live. Is that actually this is a great moment for people to wake up and say, oh, actually, it's not just totalitarianism. It was the whole subset of conditions that led to that totalitarianism. Those were so bleak that totalitarianism made sense. So I don't want to return to the prior conditions either.
That the problem of totalitarianism has to do with the fact that it believes that it knows everything. That in the end, if it understood the material basis, the mechanist basis of life well enough, that then it would be able to live eternally, to suffer, to end all suffering. So that's the entire problem. This is doomed to fail, of course. It's the uncertainty that makes a human being truly humane. And every time someone tries to eliminate this uncertainty, he dehumanizes life. And that's exactly what totalitarian leaders do. Totalitarian leaders believe that they have the ultimate answers. They shouldn't think. They should react as machines. The word totalitarianism in the first place means exactly that. Total. It means total. A total theory of how society should be organized. It's just a radical incapacity to experience the fundamental uncertainty of human existence as the precondition for creation, singularity, and uniqueness in life.
So as people are swept up into this certainty, right? And many people willingly run towards that because they didn't like whatever was going on before, and there's this inevitability. So when I hear this inevitability of the transhumanists, right? The WEF, the Davos crowd, the Yuvals. And I think a lot of people are swept up in that inevitability that this is just the way things go. But that's a feature always, I think, of totalitarianism. And it's never as total as they make it, they want to make it seem, right? It's actually, there are exits off of that inevitability. But I feel that inevitability right now, that there are a lot of people really pushing, and it's not in my country alone, it's across a big swath of humanity.
Yes, the inevitability, the feeling of inevitability is a consequence of the psychological process that is going on, of course. That's exactly what this mechanism of mass formation explains, that when you're in it, when you're in the mass formation, your attention is so focused, you see only a very small part of reality, and you see only these things that confirm the narrative you believe in. And that's the explanation why people in the end start to become convinced that if the number of contaminations with the corona crisis increase a little bit, that the country should go into lockdown, that there is no other option, and you cannot make clear at that moment. That's what Hannah Arendt said. Hannah Arendt said the tragedy of totalitarianism is that as soon as you accept the starting point A, then you have to go to the end of the murderous alphabet, she said. And it's strange for someone who is not in the grip of the phenomenon. He sees very clearly how absurd it is. No matter how much you will try to show them the absurdity of their line of reasoning, they usually won't be convinced, simply because they are in this state of mass formation, which makes the focus of attention so narrow, and which focuses all the psychological energy so much on a very limited set of representations that the other representations have no impact anymore. So that in the end, it's something like that, this process that leads to this experience of uh, inescapability. And the only way to save ourselves, the only way to deal with the problems we have, is this totalitarian ideology, the end stage of mass formation, this radical intolerance for everything that goes against this absurd theory the masses believe in.